Hey guys, welcome back to another week where we talk about all things real estate related. So, like always, any questions you guys have about the real estate market, about investing, or even about life as a real estate agent, you can always put in the comments below and make sure we make a video about it in the future. One of the biggest questions that we get, especially from first time home buyers, is once they have an accepted contract on their home, what happens next? So, along with a real estate agent and a mortgage broker, the next key person you're going to need is a lawyer. And today I brought one of my favorite lawyers here with us to help answer some questions. So, as promised, today we have Will Rowntree from Kelly Santini. Hi, Will, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So, if you can just tell us a little bit about what happens when a buyer buys a home and comes to you with an accepted contract.
Absolutely. So, before we get started, though, I have to do that lawyer thing that we always do. Obviously, none of this can be treated as legal advice.
Yeah, well, that sounds exactly like a lawyer, and it sounds like we have the right person here today.
Perfect. So, once you buy a home or once you go firm on a home, one of the things that you're going to need to do is to get a lawyer to help you close the transaction. What the lawyer does is we're going to make sure that title itself is clean and that you're taking valid legal ownership of the home. Title is really just a fancy word that we use for the database of everything that has transpired against that property. So title is going to show all of the previous owners of the property, all of the previous lenders of the property, and any type of lien or encumbrance that might otherwise be registered against the property. So one of our biggest jobs is to look at title or that database that shows everything about the property and to ensure that when you buy it, you have a valid legal ownership to it. One of the next biggest things that we're going to do is that we're going to help you coordinate getting money from your lender.
Mhm.
One of the biggest things that you need when you buy a home is access to a whole bunch of money. And oftentimes, that is going to come from a bank. And so we are going to work with the bank to ensure that the bank has all of the information about the purchaser in order to advance funds or advance the mortgage money to the purchaser on the closing date.
All right, well, so I think one of the biggest things that people want to know when they're looking at buying a home is all the costs involved. So, what does it cost to have a lawyer, and what are some other charges they can expect when buying a home?
For sure. So, most importantly, what does it cost to have a lawyer? My fees. Fees for a lawyer on a transaction for a regular family home are going to be anywhere between $1,000 to $1,500, depending on the lawyer that you use. At
Mm.
Kelly Santini, it varies a little bit depending on the purchase price, but not a whole lot. And you're going to be looking in that ballpark.
Okay.
But what's more important are the disbursements, the things that you're going to have to pay for on the closing date. The biggest thing that you're going to have to pay for is always land transfer tax,
Mhm.
which is based on the value that you purchased the property for. If you're a first time home buyer, you're in luck. You might have access to the first time home buyer's land transfer tax rebate,
Mhm.
which is going to give you up to a $4,000 rebate on those land transfer taxes, depending on the value of the property. You're also going to have to worry about some other costs, though, things like title insurance, things like registration costs. So, registration costs are what we as lawyers actually pay to the province to register the buyer on title to the property.
Mhm.
And last but not least, you're going to have some administrative fees. So, those are things like our phone bills, our paper. Don't worry, we recover it all.
That's great. But so for a home buyer who's budgeting, because that's really important, what should they expect to pay? Maybe worst case.
So worst case, if we're taking a home in Ottawa, let's just take a home worth $500,000. You can look at again your legal fees. You're going to be looking at between 1,000 and 1,500, depending on the law firm.
Mhm.
A title insurance policy for a $500,000 home is going to be around $500. That is, of course, going to be required by your lender.
Mhm.
You're going to look at registration costs of around $200 because you're going to be registering the transfer or what gives the buyer legal ownership,
Okay.
and you're going to be registering a mortgage on title. Administrative costs and disbursements of around $300 to $400. And then at the very end, you're going to have your land transfer taxes. On a $500,000 home, you're looking at around $6,400. So adding up all of those numbers would be a pretty strong estimate as to what a home buyer can expect.
Perfect. And if they're a first-time home buyer, then the 6,400 would be more like 2,400.
That's right. You get the
Okay.
$4,000 rebate, and at the $500,000 value, you would maximize that rebate out. So you get
Okay. And so, what is title insurance?
title insurance protects buyers in the event of certain things happening with their property. As lawyers, we're going to search title, but there are some searches that we're no longer going to perform because title insurance now covers these things. For example, we're not going to search for taxes any longer to ensure that taxes have been paid in full. We're not going to search for water arrears to ensure that water bills have been paid in full. We don't search for these things any longer because they cost clients money. So clients actually have to pay for these searches. And a title insurance policy is in place to protect against things like that. So if a buyer, for example, gets a tax bill for a portion of the time that they didn't own the property, title insurance is going to pay to cover that bill. Title insurance also exists for some really big things, things that can happen against title. Let's say a previous owner had some construction done to the property, unbeknownst to the new buyer. That owner doesn't pay their contractor, the contractor registers a lien, and now that lien is encumbering your buyer's property. Title insurance is in place specifically for these types of instances. They know that it wasn't the buyer's fault for not paying the contractor, and when they go to resell, title insurance is going to protect, make sure that lien gets discharged so that the title is unencumbered and that the buyer can resell that property.
Oh, okay, perfect.
And what's even more is that most lenders now, they won't close a transaction without having title insurance in place. And in Ontario, it's become the norm. At Kelly Santini, we do not close transactions without title insurance.
All right, that's great. So I know when people are looking at condos, a big thing that you do is review the status certificate. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
For sure. So a status certificate gives an overall health or paints the picture of the health of the condominium corporation in general. When you're buying a condo, you have to remember that you're not only getting involved with your unit, but you're also getting involved with all of the other unit holders within the condominium corporation because you're required to pay common expenses. Common expenses are, of course, those monthly fees that you have to pay to the condominium corporation in order to maintain all of the common areas of the condominium. So the status certificate gives us the status of all of that stuff. It's going to look at whether or not there are any arrears owing in the common expenses. But one of the biggest things it's going to do is it's going to tell us if there are any contemplated or levied special assessments against the property. A special assessment is one of those words that's going to raise red flags for you. Because if there's a special assessment, it means that the reserve fund, which is all of the money that the corporation has saved to do capital improvements to the condominium itself, it means that there is not enough money in that reserve fund and that the condominium corporation needs more money from the condo unit owners. So one of the biggest things we do is to check that status certificate to ensure that you're not walking into a situation where you're going to own a condo unit for 3 months only to get levied with a special assessment.
All right, yeah, no, I've definitely heard some horror stories about that one. But switching from the buy side, now, what is it that you do if a seller comes to you with an accepted contract?
For sure. So it is a little bit different on the sales side, and it is a little bit cheaper for those who are selling property. So whereas on the buy side, you're looking at around 1,000 to 1,500 in legal fees, you're going to be looking at a little bit less on the sell side. So you're going to be looking at around 900 to 1,200, depending on the property itself. On the sell side, it's the lawyer's job to ensure that when you're selling, you are getting rid of any of those liens or encumbrances to title that would otherwise impact the new buyer's ownership.
Mhm.
So as a seller, you're required to get rid of your mortgage and to get rid of any other lien that might be on title to the property. So our job on the sell side is to, of course, ensure that you've been paid. Funds are going to always flow into the lawyer's trust account. And then from there, we are going to make sure that each of the creditors or each of the lien claimants or the mortgagees against the property are being paid out so that you have satisfied and you have paid out any of your mortgage obligations.
Perfect. You're also the one who cuts my checks, right?
I am also the one who cuts your checks, most importantly.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I guess we can wrap this video up. Thanks a lot for coming today. I think people are going to find it really educational. But if anyone's looking for legal advice or to hire services, how can they get hold of you?
That's right, looking for legal advice because none of this was legal advice.
Oh, you got me.
We're going to put my email in the comments below, so you can always reach out to me via email. You can search us online, kellysantini.com, or they can always reach out to you, and you can, of course, connect us together.
Perfect. Like always, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, put it in the comments below. We'll make sure to make a video about it in the future. Take care.